Shalom. Here we are once again in a new message from the wisdom of the Torah. This week we are talking about the portion of Matot, which is in the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, starting from chapter 30 and going all the way to the end of chapter 32, Perek Lamed until Lamed Bet. Last week we spoke about the first part of the portion of the Torah, of this week's portion, and that is chapters 30 and 31, which refers to the oaths and the vows of women, and chapter 31, which refers to the battle against the Midianites. And therefore I would like to speak this time about chapter 32, which talks about the two and a half tribes of Gad and Reuven. We're talking about Perek Lamed Bet. And we will read inside. Umikne Rav haya livnei Rav Reuven v'livnei Gad atzum me'od. The tribes of Reuven and Gad had quite a lot of livestock. And they come to Moshe and they approach Moshe and they have a request. ויבואו בני גד ובני ראובן ויאמרו אל משה ואל אלעזר הכהן ואל נשיאי העדה, and they come and they approach Moses and the leaders of the people and they say, they have a request, and I'm reading now verse 5. ויאמרו, and they said, אם מצאנו חן בעיניך יותן את הארץ הזאת לעבדיך לאחוזה, אל תעבירנו את הירדן. If we find favor in your eyes, please, we will not cross the Jordan River. We will stay here, and this will be our permanent inheritance. Moses automatically stops, and he says to them, are you people crazy? Did you forget what happened in the time of the spies? Your fathers and great-grandfathers? When they went and they attacked the land of Israel, and they didn't want to go into Israel, and they lost the land. How can you think of such a thing? Because of you, we're going to be staying in the desert for another 40 years. It's impossible. How can you bring up such a request? What's going on with you? Didn't you learn anything from the past? They immediately said, no, don't worry. We will go ahead. We will fight in front of the people. We will be the pioneers. We will lead the other tribes while they capture the land, and only then will we return back to our wives, children, and to our sheep and goats. Moses agrees, and then Moses says to them, Vayitzav lehem, and in talking about verse 28, Vayitzav lehem pasuk kafchet, Vayitzav lehem Moshe et Elazar kohen et Yoshua ben Nun. Moses appoints Elazar and Yoshua to take about what they had promised. And then it says, verse 33, Vayiten lehem Moshe, livnei Gad v'livnei Reuven, v'lachatzi shevet Menashe ben Yosef, et mamlechet Sichon melech ha'Emori, v'et mamlechet Og melech haBashan. Moses gives the people of Gad, Reuven, and half of the tribe of Menashe, of son of Joseph. Moshe gives them the land that the people had captured from Sichon and from Og. Two questions arise when we read this chapter. Question number one is sort of a minor question, but it's interesting. When the story begins, it talks about two tribes. Mikne Rav haya livnei Reuven v'livnei Gad atzum me'od. The tribes of Reuven and the tribe of Gad approached Moses because they had quite a lot of livestock. The end of the story, when the negotiation takes place, it's between Moses and Reuven and Gad. When we finally reach the conclusion in verse 33, suddenly, Vayiten lehem Moshe, Moses gives livnei Gad, to the children of Gad, livnei Reuven, the children of Reuven, velechatzi shevet Menashe ben Yosef. Suddenly, out of the clear blue, we hear about a new tribe, not even a tribe, half of a tribe. Chatzi shevet Menashe, half of the tribe of Menashe. So what is this half of the tribe of Menashe? Where did they come from? Were they part of the negotiation in the beginning? Or did they just finally pop up now? The second question I want to ask is a much more serious question. When Moses reacts to the offer of sons of Gad and Reuven, he says to them, "Are you crazy? Do you remember what happened to your fathers and your forefathers when they wanted not to cross the Jordan River?" And he pretty much attacks them for behaving as those miraglim, the spies that were mentioned several weeks ago in the Parashat Shlach. In verse 15, the story of the 12 spies that were sent to explore the land of Israel. What we see over there was these spies came back and they had two problems. One was, in their eyes, they said, "We cannot capture Israel. We cannot capture the land. We shall not go. We are weak. We don't have the ability to capture the land. We can't go in our hands." When Moses speaks to the people of Gad and Reuven, he does not attack them for disliking the land, but he attacks them for weakening the people. As he says to them, "Hinei chatatem," if you do what you're talking about, "V'nichbesha haaretz lifnei Adonai," but he speaks to them and he attacks them. "Lama tiniun," I'm talking about verse 7, Pasuk Zayin, "Lama tiniun et lev b'nei Yisrael me'avor el haaretz." Why do you cause the children of Israel to lack the motivation to go and try to capture the land? The question I'm trying to refer to is, why, when they accept the offer, when they offered on their own, when Moses accepts their offer, did he forget about the fact that they're staying on the other side of the Jordan River? Now, the question is, I would say, is the eastern side of the Jordan River part of Israel or not part of Israel? Is it part of Israel? Then what's the problem with if they get it from the beginning? If it's not part of Israel, how? Even if they go in as pioneers, why will they be able to go back and stay out of the land of Israel? Actually, the same question arises in what we read in last week's portion, in the portion of Pinchas, when we spoke about Moses going up to the mountain of Avarim, and I'm talking about chapter 27, verse 12. Moses is told to climb up to the mountain of Avarim and look at the land. Where is Moses? He's right now on the eastern side of the Jordan River. You're not going to go into the land. Go up to the mountain and take a look at the land. Is this part of the land? Or is it not part of the land? Actually, the same question arises when we study the book of Joshua. And I'm talking about the book of Joshua, chapter 12. When Joshua concludes the capturing of the land, they're summarizing the capturing, and the first half of chapter 12 in Joshua refers to what Moses captured. And they're including the eastern part of the Jordan River as part of the land of Israel. And this is Moshe Eved Adonai Uvnei Yisrael, as it says there in verse 6. Moses, slave of God, together with the people of Israel, captured. So there it's referring to capturing that part as part of Israel. So the question is a basic question of understanding. Maybe Moses did go into the land of Israel. If he went to the eastern part of the Jordan, so he was in the land. What we have to understand here is that there actually are two concepts. Basically, there is a command by God to go and capture the land which is called Eretz Canaan, to capture the land of Canaan, which is on the western side of the Jordan River. And there we have to capture the entire land. On the other hand, there's another command. Every place where your steps, which means every place where you as an army captures, is yours. But that only happens after you capture what you have to capture. Only after you take over the land of Israel, which is on the western side of the Jordan River, only then can you start thinking about the eastern side. So when Moses captured the eastern side of the Jordan, it was not yet part of the Holy Land. And if those tribes would remain there, they would not be part of the Holy Land. Only after they take part in capturing the land are they entitled to go back, and that will become part of the land. And that is what Moses was telling them. He told them, don't persuade the Jews, don't dissuade the Jews from crossing the river, because they have a command to capture the Holy Land, the land of Canaan. And now we can go back and take a look at what happened on the eastern side of the Jordan River and get a deeper understanding. Who are the nations that we have on the eastern side of the Jordan River? First of all, we'll start with the nations who are not part of the Jewish people. Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Then we have Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe. Interesting that all of these nations and tribes have a special status in the Torah. Edom, Moab, and Ammon were actually part of the family. Abraham first offers Lot to split the land with him. Only when Lot chooses not to did Abraham take the land, get the blessing, and the whole land was for him. Who are the two children of Lot? Moab and Ammon. They receive from the eastern side of the Jordan River. The second person who's referred to as a brother, Esav, is referred to as a brother. And Esav hu Edom. Edom was the older brother. Once again, he was entitled to receive part of the land, but he sold to Jacob his being the firstborn. He loses the part, but he still remains in the neighborhood. He gets a part on the eastern side of the river. Here we come to those who are part of the people. Reuven was the firstborn of Jacob. He was supposed to be the firstborn. But as Jacob says at the end of the book of Genesis, he actually diselects Reuven. He says, listen, you lost your choice. Reuven was about to be part, just like Edom and Moab and Ammon. But the fact that Reuven comes and joins and takes part in capturing the land, his land becomes part of the Holy Land. Gad is also a firstborn. He is the firstborn of the maid Zilpah. He also deserved some kind of special portion. But once again, the tribes that received the eastern part actually they were the firstborn. They were supposed to get a double part, but they, on their own initiative, chose not to enter the land, the Holy Land. They get their part on the wider side of the land, and that is where God. Actually, there's another firstborn, and that is Dan. Dan did not manage to find himself in the land, and finally at the end, he turns up all the way up north on the eastern side of the river, also where the city of Dan is and where the Bashan is. Well, the other we have in the middle is Menashe. Menashe was the firstborn of Joseph. Jacob appoints Menashe. He says, Ephraim and Menashe, ki Reuven v'Shimon Yuli. Ephraim and Menashe. Menashe was the oldest. But actually, Joseph was only the 11th. He was not the firstborn. But Joseph had a special treatment. And therefore, Menashe had two possibilities. He could have become part of the tribes that were diselected, or he could be part of the tribes that are part of the people. In this week's portion, we have two sides of the same coin. The daughters of Tzlafchada from the Menashe family, when they were not willing to accept what happened to them, they demand to receive part of the land. They get their land on the western side, part of the major Holy Land. The other half of Menashe chose to accept the fact that they were diselected, and they remain on the eastern side of the Jordan River. So if I'm to summarize the story, the eastern side of the Jordan River is part of the Holy Land after capturing the Holy Land, but it's still not the main core of the land. It's those who were diselected and those who lost the chance of being part of the main family. Menashe connects by the fact that there are two halves of Menashe on each side, makes sure that all the tribes, Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe, stay part as the core of the Jewish people forever. Shabbat Shalom.